Welcome back to Redefining AI, the show that uncovers the nuances of artificial intelligence, exploring its impacts and evolution across industries. Now, today we dive deep into the realm of you in the future of artificial intelligence. Now, to do this, I've been joined by David Espindola, an entrepreneur, futurist, advisor, and author. He is the founder of Brainius, an education, technology, and consulting company that is currently focused on applying AI knowledge and capabilities to transform organizations. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Laura. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Excellent. It's really nice to have you here. I think that it is quite a ever-present and popular topic at the moment, our own position, the subjective, you or objective, in the future of artificial intelligence. So we're really happy to have you here, and I look forward to an insightful discussion.
So do I. Thank you.
Maybe, David, just so that our guests can get to know you a little bit better, what would you like to share with us at the start? Maybe a little bit about who you are and how you've ended up in the field as well. I mean, it's always an interesting question we see in a lot of external contribution. People are always curious about, well, how did that individual end up in artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about my background. So I started out as an engineer. I have an engineering degree, and I went to work in Silicon Valley, which, as you know, is the core center of technology and entrepreneurship. And I worked at two very fast growing technology companies, one of which did an IPO. And that was just a tremendous experience for me because I got to see firsthand just the power of technology and entrepreneurship. So once I was done with that, I decided that I wanted to go work for a large software company. So I actually went to work for Oracle. I was there for 10 years working the consulting business. And during my tenure at Oracle, I got to work with a lot of CIOs, and I thought that it would make sense for me to pursue a career as a CIO. And it just so happened that I had a boss at Oracle that I had a great relationship with, and he had become a CIO himself. So he was very kind and generous in inviting me to go work with him and show me the ropes and give me the experience that I needed to become a CIO. So then when the opportunity came along, I became the CIO of a software company called Flexera Software in Chicago. And so that's sort of my background. I've spent my entire career dealing with technology, dealing with business systems. And now we have this incredible technology, AI, and I've been just fascinated by it. And I've been spending a lot of time studying it, researching it. I wrote the book. So that's how I got into it.
There's a few things that I'd probably want to pick up on immediately. So you mentioned that you were part of the ecosystem within Silicon Valley, and you described it as the center of tech and entrepreneurship. Yeah. Do you think that there is, based on your own experience, certain criteria that would make one successful as an entrepreneur? Is it something that you picked up having spent a lot of time in that ecosystem within Silicon Valley?
Yeah, well, there's a lot that goes into it. I think entrepreneurs are very resilient, right? They have to be able to deal with failure and just persist, because it's not easy. It's not easy being an entrepreneur. That's one thing that I learned in that process. But, if you get it right, you only have to get it right once, right? So if you get it right just once, the opportunities are tremendous. Once you get the momentum going and once, you start experiencing success, it can really make a change, not only for the founders, but for, several people, all the employees that are part of that company, that are part of that ecosystem. It can be life-changing for those individuals. So I really have a great appreciation for people that have the ability to do that are resilient, that are persistent, that have a vision, that are able to gather the resources that they need to move companies forward, whether it's, investors or employees or other resources that they can gather to make their vision a reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, obviously, you mentioned a couple of the characteristics. Resilience was one that you brought to the forefront a couple of times, and also the ability to really identify a vision and identify resources. And I imagine taking people on this journey together. Yeah. You spoke about as well, like an ability to be able to deal with failure. did you then deal with failure yourself as part of that journey, or have you just witnessed that there's a lot of failure involved in entrepreneurship?
Oh, absolutely. I saw failure firsthand. So the first company that I worked at, it was an incredible story because the company grew extremely fast. They were building computers, PCs at the time, and computer components. And they built a really beautiful manufacturing facility in Silicon Valley. We were growing very fast. And then the market changed drastically because we started getting competition from overseas. And what happened to the PC market at the time is there were really only two ways to play that market. Either you were the low-cost provider, which basically, you had to be overseas because you couldn't compete by manufacturing locally in the US, or you were the brand name, the recognized brand name. If you were in the middle, you just didn't have a chance. So that company grew extremely fast and then very quickly also stopped growing and eventually had to spin off into another business. And then the other company that I worked for had a similar experience. So the change wasn't so much in the market forces themselves, but more in the technology that changed. So that company was in the networking business. And at the time, token ring technology was the most robust networking technology that was available, technology that was developed by IBM. And the company rode that wave of growth on token ring, but then the market switched because Ethernet became much more capable and robust. And that change in technology, the company just wasn't able to keep up. So, what's fascinating about all of these companies, all of these stories, is that you can grow very fast, but it can also go down very fast. It's just the nature of the business.
Mm-hmm. So do you see that what would be interesting, I think, at this point would possibly be, is it possible to then detect a parallel trend that's happening in AI? Like, do you think that there is that wave of growth? And what do you think the market force is encouraging or discouraging? Like, how do you see that if we look at it in a parallel at the moment of what's happening in the artificial intelligence market?
Yeah, I think it's a very dynamic environment right now. So there's so much happening. There's so many changes. Things are changing so fast. I've never seen anything change this fast in my entire career. So it's really fascinating to see, for example, we saw a lot of startups starting to work on AI applications, and a lot of these companies were leveraging foundational models from companies like OpenAI. And then OpenAI comes along and demos GPT-4, where you can now, with a few clicks of a button, build your own GPT. And so a lot of companies that are going down that path, they had to pivot because you can't compete with that, right? So it's a very dynamic process. I think companies are going to be constantly trying to figure out their niche, their market, where they can find product market fit. And that may work for a while, and then the market changes and you have to change along with the market. It's just a very dynamic process.
And I suppose that sort of intertwines a little into the focus. I mean, the focus of the book, the title is You in the Future of Artificial Intelligence, but we can also sort of classify you as an organization or a product provider, a solution provider as well. So
absolutely,
if we're looking at that component, then do you think it's possible in this dynamic market that each solution provider can find their niche, that they can find their market, that they can compete with larger players that have quite a lot of dominance in the market at the moment?
Yeah, so I see in this AI market very, very broadly two different kinds of opportunities. So one opportunity is the kind of opportunity that requires a lot of capital, right? It's the foundational types of activities that we see companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon going after. I think those are just very tough to compete in that market because it require a tremendous amount of capital that only the large corporations are able to fund. On the other hand, I think on the application side, there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for startups because that's a nascent market. There are lots of different applications within businesses, even on the consumer market. So I would say that entrepreneurs that are focusing on building applications and not necessarily focusing on the foundational components have a tremendous opportunity ahead.
Mm. And how would you encourage that they pursue that opportunity? If someone were listening, they have entrepreneurial spirit, they have an idea, what could they do to pursue that? And how do you, I mean, you were obviously a CIO, you were a consultant, and you've developed, as you've highlighted, a deep understanding of technological trends and their impact on business and society. Just from this perspective of what we've emphasized there or highlighted, how would you advise entrepreneurs to proceed so that they can really look at how AI is evolving and what role they could possibly anticipate it playing in sort of shaping business landscapes?
Yeah, so I think because this market is so dynamic and we are still in its infancy, I think entrepreneurs need to be very flexible at this point in time. It's a learning process for all of us. So, again, having that resilience, having the ability to pivot, being on this continuous discovery process, it's an ongoing learning process for everybody. And just, going after the opportunities. Obviously, you need to have a vision. You need to be able to gather the resources to work with you on that vision, and then start experimenting, start going after the particular market that you're interested in, do some experiments there, get some early customer input, and then see if that's the right niche for you. Keep in mind that even though you may find that product market fit, things may change. So you got to be always on the lookout for how the market is changing and how you have to pivot to be able to address those changes.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So if we pivot ourselves in the conversation to soulful you in the future of artificial intelligence,
yep.
I mean, it explores the human aspect of AI. Can you maybe elaborate for us, David, on the key themes or insights from the book and how individuals can navigate the integration of AI into their lives and the impact that it will have on them, on you?
Yeah, no, I'll be happy to do that. So I think, one of the things that I tried to do, and I hope I was able to convey that in the title of the book, is this juxtaposition of, the soft, emotional aspect of being human and the more analytical side of AI. And I really believe that it's the combination of the two. It's the collaboration between the human and the AI that's going to bring, tremendous transformation and possibilities to our lives, to business, to society, and so on. So in the book, I talk about a number of different topics, all the way from things that are very practical, like, the skills that we need to develop in order to be effective in collaborating with these intelligent machines. I talk about the ethical concerns. I talk about collaboration between humans and AI. But I also dig into some of the deeper questions. And, we do have some deep questions here that we need to address. What does it mean to us as humans to now have an entity that could be just as smart, if not smarter than we are? And so this gets into some deep philosophical questions that, philosophers have struggled with this for thousands of years. You get into this conversation about consciousness. What is consciousness? Can AI become conscious? Will they have, their own needs and their own desires? So I touch a little bit on those topics in the book. But the message that I tried to portray there was an optimistic message about the future of AI, because I think AI has a tremendous chance of bringing benefits to humanity and to society. Obviously, there are concerns, there are ethical concerns, there are other types of concerns. But in general, I think we can leverage this technology to really create a better future for all of us. And that was the overall message that I wanted to end the book with.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to come back to a few of the points that you've mentioned, but what was your motivation for writing this book in particular? I mean, you've conveyed that you want to sort of promote a positive message, but what was the motivation for wanting to share this positive message and for actually writing the book itself?
Yeah, so there are a couple of components to that. So the first one is I had written a previous book called The Exponential Era. And in that book, I talked about 8 different platforms that were growing exponentially and that were converging and bringing just incredible changes to business and to society. And one of those platforms was AI. So I thought that AI deserved a book of its own. But the first book was more focused on business. So I provided a methodology for companies to deal with these fast changes, things around agile design thinking, lean. But with this book, I wanted to focus more on the human side of things. And one of the things that I noticed within AI was that, before ChatGPT, we have this bookmark called ChatGPT. Before ChatGPT, most people don't know anything about AI, right? AI was a conversation that happened either within industry, people that were in the AI industry or IT industry, or within the confines of universities. And ChatGPT popularized AI. So now we have a lot of people that are hearing about AI, but they don't really understand it. They don't know what it means. And I think with a lot of the messages that I saw, a lot of those messages were quite negative. People were emphasizing, oh, AI is going to take your job. AI is going to, exterminate humanity, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to give a different view, a view that says, yes, there are risks. Yeah, there are things that we need to be concerned about. But on the other hand, this technology could really bring a lot of benefits. So we need to look at both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly see those concerns, and I think they're minimizing in certain areas and also avenues, depending on where and when you look at the narratives and the exchange of sort of optimism, pessimism, and the sentiment around maybe the eradication of jobs through the replacement of AI. Which maybe leads back to a question on consciousness. So you mentioned that there was the consciousness question of, can AI become conscious? Which again follows a train of like, what is consciousness, etc., which could go into a whole philosophical debate. But maybe in one sentence, in your own words, if you were to answer that quite high level, are you convinced that AI can become conscious or not?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, but also a very deep question. And I think, part of the problem, like you said, is that we don't really have a good definition for what consciousness is, right? So it's impossible for us to say machines will or will not become conscious if we don't define that extremely well. So I'm of the opinion that machines will be able to mimic humans extremely well. So we have this thing called emotional AI, where AI will be able to detect our emotions and will be able to respond to us as if they were human. And a lot of people are going to just be amazed at how AI will look human, but it's not human, right? So, and that's the key point, because we are not machines, in my point of view. I believe that we are more than just, electric discharges and chemicals in our brains. And so that gets into this whole conversation about, what your belief system is, what your theology is, and so on. But I just don't believe that machines have intrinsic desires or intrinsic needs. I think everything that machines will do will be based on objective functions that we impart to them. So I think there's a big difference between being a machine and being human.
Definitely. And I think that those extrinsic, sort of explicit almost commands that they're working on is also, a recipe that you question what might happen to the interaction between machines and humans and humans and humans. I mean, for me, the question is very much, again, looking at the definition used of what is consciousness. It's all about how is that development of consciousness from a perspective of the capabilities of the machine versus human. How will that play out in the future? It's a question that I've actually been quite occupied with in the last couple of weeks when I see the advancements of technology and the advancements of AI and capabilities. And I certainly think about future generations and maybe how AI will drive you in the future. What's your thoughts on that and the interaction? I mean, you mentioned that in your book, you sort of outline skills that we need to collaborate with machines. I'm sure you must have thought about that then as well.
Yeah, so I think, there's some things about us as humans that are skills that we could bring to the table with AI, things that I don't think AI will be able to do. So I think a good example is empathy, right? So we have this ability to have empathy towards other humans. And during that relationship between humans, we develop trust. And trust is so fundamental to everything that we do, in our work lives, in our personal lives. And I think that human aspect of the interaction with machines and other humans will be fundamental to bringing us forward into a better world. So the other aspect of this that's really fundamental is the ethical consequences of AI. So things like privacy, things like accountability, who is accountable when AI makes a decision that has a negative consequence? And should we always have a human in the loop when we have machines making decisions that could have some very significant impact to the world? So those are the deeper questions that I think we absolutely need to have humans in the loop to collaborate with AI to make the right decisions to help us get to a better place.
Definitely, definitely. And as you've outlined, looking ahead, I mean, I do believe that there are the ethical considerations and challenges that not only we, but businesses need to look at to be able to navigate as AI does continue to advance. We want to ensure that they are responsible and that there is inclusive AI adoption. Maybe just to part on that sort of thread, David, what would you advise as sort of priority one for businesses to consider when they're looking at inclusive AI adoption?
Yeah, so I look at this as a big change management challenge, is what it is. So we need to go through that change management process to help companies adapt to this new world that's going to be driven by AI and automation. And so, I think just like any other change management initiative, it starts with a vision. So you have to have a vision for what it is that you're trying to accomplish and how this technology is going to help you get there. And then you need to, provide some safety nets so that people are not scared about AI, so that people will understand how AI will benefit them, how they can be included in the process of defining the things that AI will do within an organization, getting people educated. I think education is absolutely fundamental here because a lot of people really don't have a basic understanding of what AI is all about. So getting the workforce upskilled in understanding AI, understanding how to collaborate with AI will be fundamental. So I think companies need to be an ongoing learning organization. I think companies need to develop a culture that's based on the growth mindset. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but a growth mindset is one in which people are open to new ideas, open to listening to other people. It's a culture that emphasizes having empathy for collaborators, for the customer. So I think that growth mindset, and that, by the way, is what Satya Nadella did when he joined Microsoft as CEO, when he was promoted to CEO, because he had been with the company for several years. And if you read his book, the first thing that he worked on was culture, and he changed the culture at Microsoft from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And that, according to him, was really important to help Microsoft become once again the influential technology company that it is today.
Which is a huge challenge in itself to change an
It is.
organization from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Can you elaborate on how he achieved that and how you would encourage others to be able to achieve that within their organization?
Yeah, so it's really a fascinating story because in the case of Microsoft, the culture, and this may have been a reflection of, Bill Gates being the super smart guy that he is. I think there was this culture within Microsoft where the employees wanted to prove how smart they were. So if you go into a meeting, you're trying to show your peers that you're super smart, that you're smarter than they are. And if you have this mindset that you are very smart, then your attitude is one that You're not necessarily open to new ideas. You're not necessarily open to listening to other people because you think you already know everything that you need to know. So, he really tried to change that culture, and he did very effectively in showing people how important it is to have empathy. So empathy was one of these key themes. You have to have empathy for the customer. You have to have empathy for your collaborators and really understand where they're coming from and being open to listening and listening with empathy. So, I think it's fascinating that Nadella coming in as a new CEO, you would think that the first thing that he would work on is, to create some new products, develop new technologies. But the fact that he worked on the culture first, which is this, soft kind of thing for technology people, is just fascinating.
No,
But
it
it
is.
proves the point that the human aspect of business, business is just human relationships. So that human aspect is so fundamental.
Yeah, certainly agree. There's a strong importance in the emphasis of human relationships and engagement and leading with empathy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been fascinating, David. Thank you very much for your input today. And I'm sure that everyone's going to enjoy the episode that we have shared with them today. So thank you very much for being on Redefining AI.
Thank you, Lauren. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
And I'd like to thank everyone else who's joined us in this conversation today. If you would like to share the episode with a friend, then do so. Thank you.